Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. I am here today with Tarun at PartRunner. Tarun, if you could take a moment to introduce yourself and the company you represent.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. My name is Tarun. I'm co-founder and CTO of PartRunner. PartRunner is basically trying to build a marketplace for last and middle mile logistics, but focusing on big and bulky. We are one of the highest growing startups in Mexico right now in the logistics space.
Wow. And if you can take us back to when was it, 2018 when you started?
It's an interesting journey that got us to where we are today, right? Though we started in 2019, we started in actually New England, in Boston. I met my other co-founders there. Then back then we were more like an on-demand space, like a GoPuff. You can think of a GoPuff GoPuff or Uber, something, but for regional and local suppliers. Then we raised a seed round from Cemex Ventures back in late 2021. As part of that, we also expanded our operations to Mexico in early 2022. And then we found a better product market fit in Mexico. So right now we are hyper focusing on that aspect of the company growth.
How did you end up going from Boston to Mexico? Why Mexico? Did you
Yeah,
discover something during your travels or your partner, or how
yeah.
did you end up there in Mexico?
So there are two factors. Obviously, one of my other co-founder was a dual citizen, like US born, Mexico raised. And the second part was Cemex Ventures. They are like a big conglomerate, right? But they had headquarters in Mexico.
Mm.
So they were like a corporate venture. So as part of the thesis, was to expand to Mexico to so that we can get because I kind of found a gap and I felt like we also could fit in that space. And I think these two factors really helped a big role in us going there. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. So let's talk about PartRunner. What makes PartRunner unique and different and in the market space or in the industry?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. That's a very interesting question, right? So I'll put it this way, when you think of logistics, to be honest, everything that gets delivered or anything that moves in the world eventually has to get onto a truck, right? Like there is no other way it kind of goes there. It's a truck, maybe these days it's a car, maybe like a bike, right? But end of the day, something has to get on some wheels to move, correct? Thing is, when it comes to bikes and sedans, like small cars and all, right? They generally take care of the smaller parcels, right? And with the marketplaces, this thing has been pretty much solved with the Ubers of the world, right? Similarly, even in Mexico, like we have alternate competitors of Uber, they kind of took care of it. Hey, if I can deliver a food, I can always deliver a smaller parcel, right? So there's nothing challenging there. I don't need to know what is inside. There's nothing special skill. Like it's almost like carrying a packet. But what we found a big gap is like what happens as we move higher, when we look at big retail places, right? Or even within construction space, when you're dealing with heavier weights, bigger vehicles, and you need specialized drivers, specialized vehicles. And that's where the market is very fragmented. You're always dealing with the local fleet operators, very independent drivers, owner operators, right? And it becomes very tough for companies, especially when there's seasonality in the business, to manage their operations. That's where company like Partner comes in, right? So we are building this two-sided marketplace. On the demand side, we are working mainly with enterprise national companies like Amazon, Walmart. On the supply side, we are working with the fleet operators. So we kind of play this middleman so that the companies can meet their demand flexibility and peak season needs. On the demand side, we're mainly working with enterprise companies like Amazon, Walmart, and on the supply side, we are working with fleet operators. So for the companies, we kind of are the go-to place, right? Hey, these are the routes that we need to move, and then we work with the local fleet operators to provide the service. But we provide the end-to-end service. That also makes us a very special, right? We're not just saying like, hey, these are good fleets. Do you want to work with them? It's not just that. We are like going through the whole end-to-end solution.
Would you consider your biggest customers or client base, or like what industry are those?
Yeah. So in the beginning, actually, we were much more restrictive. Like we were thinking in terms of mainly construction stuff, construction or local suppliers, regional suppliers, right? But now we are actually very agnostic about industry as such. it has that two, three criteria for us, right? Like one is like it needs to be an enterprise company as of now, right? They need to have national presence, and third, they should have worked with third party providers before us. Like they shouldn't have be having their own vehicles. Like they should be working with some third party providers, right? That's when our solution becomes much more optimal because, hey, I'm working with these 10 people, right? If I work with PartRunner, right, they can solve my problems faster and easier.
In the beginning, maybe even before, or let's flip it around. What was the reason you had to essentially get help, financial help support from CMAX Ventures? Like in the beginning, what were the challenges that led you towards that? When you start the company, did you know that you will have to do it right away, or
Yeah.
what happened in the beginning?
So I guess, I mean, that's a tough question to say, but I'll put it this way, right? When we started the company, I think there's always a learning curve on what type of company you want to build. I think for us, we always wanted to build a venture-backed company than how to say, than a self-reliant, something that grows and you use the profits that kind of comes through and keeps growing, right? I
Mm.
think we were always wanted to do a venture-backed company, so we started raising some family and friends round, kind of Silicon Valley route, right? It was a conscious decision of us to go in that direction. Otherwise, I think we could have continued what we were doing, but it would have led into different way. Yeah.
It would probably take a little bit longer if you weren't backed
Yes. Yeah,
by
it's
this.
different longer funds add a lot of, makes you experiment more, right? It's different. It's very different, right? It's very different to do a venture-backed company compared to like growing like a traditional business.
Got it. Let's talk about your role. CPTO, Chief
Yes.
Product and
And technology.
Technology Officer.
That's right.
That's a very interesting name. That's the first time I hear that acronym. So
Yeah.
tell us about maybe not the role specifically, but I would love to learn more, and the audience for sure as well, about your day to day. What do you do on a daily basis? We just spoke before the
Yeah.
recording that most people in US celebrate Memorial Day. Everyone has a day off, and some of them, including me, will do the Murphy challenge. I don't know if you heard about the Murphy challenge on the
Okay.
fitness side, but
Okay.
you will have to work because obviously in Mexico the market is operating. So how does your day to day look like?
Yeah, so basically it depends upon what kind of teams I'm working with, right? Like I would kind of break it down at a high level into 3 to 4 teams I kind of work on a daily basis. One is a tech team, right? So it would be a day-to-day sprint. You start with a morning call, go through like what is happening, any blockers, trying to resolve them, right? Second would
Mhm.
be product meetings where I'll be working with the designer and the product manager, leading them, right? How is upcoming release going, how the traction of the releases that we did, day-to-day metrics. Then the third would be I work because I'm a co-founder, right? I also kind of did take care of the financials of the business. So I'm looking at the accounting side now and then. I also have the data team, so I work with data analysts to see how the dashboards or what are the missing needs of the team. And finally, this is something not I do day to day, but I often try to connect with my operations team and sometimes with my sales team to understand what are the gaps or how are things coming along. And maybe lastly would be customers and drivers.
So it's you wore definitely many hats during your day-to-day operations.
Yes.
Speaking
Not
of,
everything is day to day. Some are like often happen much more often, and the some are much more weekly basis, you could say.
but you do have to be flexible and be able to adjust to
Yes.
what they brings. Speaking of teams, what's your main way of expansion at PartRunner?
So basically, because we were working from the day one with enterprise national spread companies, so we don't really have to do like an Uber kind of a playbook, right? We don't need to, hey, we are going to open a new market. What does it take, right? So the companies we work with naturally tell us like, hey, we have a new need in this space. Can you tackle it, right? So we don't need to like put 100 vehicles out there to see if it can be served like that. If there's a need, we take like few weeks of time and then we are able to open those markets. That's why we are like live in like around 15. I think now we would be live in around like 12 to 15, 12 states of Mexico at least. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's in terms of geographical expansion. I think it's a no-brainer for us that customers take us. In terms of customer expansion, like I said, like we are we tried initially to be very, very focused on like, certain type of customers, but we found that it's not the customer type, but how they do the logistics matters more. There are few things that we always keep, like retail is something we are finding much more traction compared to I would say construction as such in general, or local regional suppliers. So so yeah, in terms of like if you say my sales team, what do they try more of is would be the retail side. Yeah.
And speaking of expansion, I heard you're looking for Series A funding round.
Yeah.
What would be enticing for the investors? What are you planning on essentially using the resources for? And so we can touch the brief
Sure.
on that.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll put this way, right? So when we took a strategic decision to like double down on Mexico, we were doing around like 50K per month, right? Now we are doing around 600K per month, and this peak we could all end up being like in this May we could even end up being at 750K per month, right? So that's like giving us like a 10 million runway for 2025. So at this point, we grow traditional, like, if we don't bring in much more venture capital, I think we will continue to grow around 50% to 100% year a year. But
Wow.
there is a huge opportunity in the space to be growing at 2 to 3x. And
Mm.
for that, we need to kind of invest much more strategically into product and into more enterprise sales, right? And also do a little bit of expansion, like we spoke about more customer types, and also like open up different type of services. That is the main reason behind we trying to do a round right now of Series A. We are mainly looking for a lead investor who can come in with 1 to 2 million check. We have around 1 to 1.5 million soft commitments from earlier investors and other VCs, but really it's a lead investor that's a missing piece puzzle for us, and hopefully we'll solve it in coming. Anyone who is interested in LATAM, logistics, marketplaces, I think this is a very, very good opportunity to invest.
Yeah, I mean, there's many marketplace companies that have raised 9 and 10 figure valuation. So I wish you the same.
Yeah.
What's the North Star for PartRunner? Where do you see the company in like 10 years or 15 years from now?
Wow, that's a long, that's a really long way, right? But to be honest, the way we always spoke about internally is like, uh, we would be across LATAM. Eventual aim is to be across LATAM, the leading marketplace focusing on the big and bulky, right? Where all our operations would be like 90% automated, right? Like without any human intervention, and there will be 10% that could be like, we're doing with a daily, daily human support, right? We would be spanning across all type of company verticals, and also in terms of size, like we won't be just be doing with the enterprise. We would also be at the local and regional level. We won't just be doing the dedicated. We'll be open to open the first spot market in Mexico by then, right? We should be opening in 2 to 3 years, but we would be like the leading spot market in Mexico for logistics models, right? And then just in terms of product, I think we won't just be logistics, right? I think there would be a lot of different verticals, especially on the supply side, where we could be building up some fintech verticals for our fleet operators and drivers who are very, very. The space is completely untouched by technology, at least in Latin.
So there's a big space for expansion, but that leads me to a segue into innovations and maybe technology. That's obviously a hot topic right now. Any innovations that you are particularly excited about? Maybe artificial intelligence, and also anything related to fleets, maybe electric vehicles, or something as crazy as driverless vehicles, or anything like that.
Yes. So actually, yeah, electric vehicle is something I missed, but that's a good point that you brought up. But to be honest, I think there's so much world is changing very, very fast. For us, like AI is bringing in a lot of efficiency within the tech, within the operations. I think it will enable us to automate a lot of tasks that were very complicated before to do it. Like, it would have taken much more skill and time to automate few stuff. But I think with the AI agents, we'll be able to do that transition much more aggressive and faster and grow with lesser people. In terms of vehicle diversification, definitely electric vehicles is something we have. We kind of do pilots, right? It's not our main uh, how to say differentiator as such, but it's something we are very conscious of continuously increasing within our fleets. And third, driverless vehicles, if you ask me in a 10-year span, I think it could, because thing is we are dealing with a very heavy stuff. So it's not just the vehicle that matters, it also like the robotics that would matter, right? The ability to lift and put it aside, stuff like that. So that's why it's a bit more long run, right? But it's going to happen, right? Eventually, it's going to come to the point where some of the uh, deliveries wouldn't need a human at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a tricky question, but I feel like interestingly enough, we started with human transportation. I'm talking about
Yes.
the driverless vehicle. So it's instead of testing it on something that, like, maybe some freight or something that it wouldn't harm anyone unless it drives into human. But we were testing. I don't know if you see it in Austin, but in Los Angeles, I was so surprised to see a person driving in a car in the back seat, and there's no driver in front of the
Yes.
car. I mean, on behind the steering wheel. So it
Yeah.
sounds like your prediction is on point. I mean, that sooner or later it's going to happen with bigger things that require loading. I mean, even that. I mean, we probably, if there is a big arm that can catch or spaceship or a rocket by Elon Musk. I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah.
Then that's definitely something that will be able to load whatever that is needs to be loaded on a truck, and then transport it without a human being. But we'll see if it's going to happen in 10 or 15 or 20 years, or
Yeah.
it or sooner. I mean, you never know.
Yeah. I mean, it always comes down to two things, right? How reliable that innovation would end up being, and the unit economics that will bring to the companies that leverage the technology.
The
I think
liability part.
unless, yeah,
I feel like that's the keyword there. Like, who's going to be liable if something goes wrong? The
yeah,
technology company that build the software for it, the car maker, or no one?
yeah,
No one will be there. Insurance company, who's there to blame when something goes wrong? So that can definitely get into a chaos. Now, as I was doing some research, I saw some mention of CO2 emissions or lowering CO2 emissions. Is that a big aspect or an important thing that you talk about at the PartRunner?
So basically, the way we do our logistics, it internally, like indirectly, kind of has that effect, in terms of reducing carbon emissions, right? Because we do a lot of optimized routes, right? We do less empty miles, the driver is able to get a new route quicker, so it has an indirect effect. But again, it's something we are conscious of. It's something, like you said, when we move towards electric vehicles, right? That becomes more like a mainstream way of doing logistics, especially in the higher vehicle ton. I think we will be at the forefront of those kind of innovation in the logistics space.
And are you using mainly AI now, or do you have something proprietary that you've developed to optimize the routes and make sure that they're actually possible?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we have a proprietary AI that we built. It's more of leveraging agents and solutions that are out there. I think fingers crossed, we'll see how things goes, I think whatever we are doing to make our day-to-day operations better, I think eventually that will lead us to build something that can become like a generic AI for where we can build more proprietary technology or software on top of it. But as of now, it's mainly external tools that we are using to optimize and move faster and efficiently. Yeah.
And since you reminded me of like a Silicon Valley founder, that was the first thought as I was doing my research. Are there any, on a personal side, are there any habits that, or maybe some routines that help you kind of like navigate through those more challenging time, less challenging times? You wear many hats at your company, as you mentioned earlier. How do you keep it balanced and, I guess, stay sane during the time of growth and day-to-day operations as well?
So, I mean, It's it's an interesting question, right? So what are the habits that help you? I don't know. I think for me, at least, I'll be honest. It really comes from my drive to do it. I think if you really like what you're doing, if you're very passionate, I think you'll automatically start doing things, right? But it's a good point that you brought up. Like you also need to channel whatever you're passionate about to a good habits, right? For example, I start my day at 7:30. I wake up, I do a few things, and then I kind of get into my daily routine till like a couple of hours, get up to speed, then I move on to different part of the business, right? So like that, like everyone has their own particular routine in terms of how they go about it. But it really drives from your passion. Like if you like it, then you can clearly create those routines for yourself and habits, I guess.
Makes sense. And since you travel quite frequently, especially to
Yes.
Mexico, during your travels, do you have any books that maybe books that are talking about other founders that raised capital and were able to scale companies, and any books that come to your mind that helped you maybe in the beginning or with any decisions during the a couple of years, or like what, 7 8 7 years right now, 6 7 years at PartRunner?
I would say I haven't been such a, like, how to say, I haven't read like so many books as such, but I have read couple, recently at least in terms of product, I have read a couple of books. It doesn't come on top of my mind right now, the authors and titles, but they have kind of helped quite a bit because it makes you relate to what you're doing, to what is out there or what is coming next.
Yeah,
Especially between seed to Series A, it's very complicated. Like you want to move fast, but at the same time you have to show revenue, right?
yeah,
So it becomes like a tough balance, especially in a logistics operation space where it's like a two-legged horse. There's a product and there is an operations, right? And a lot of it is controlled by operations in terms of what you are really able to provide to the user at the end of the day. But that has really helped me a little bit in terms of understanding the product process, right? But yeah, I do recommend that. I think it's something I should also be better at. I think whenever I read any book, I always felt good that, oh, wow, this is interesting. I should be doing more often, to be honest.
yeah. I mean, there's plenty of books. I think one that comes to mind that could be potentially helpful, it would be anything by Peter Thiel. Not only books, but any lectures that he gave. I feel like he's done so many interesting. He participated in so many startups that
Hmm.
scaled from 0 to 1
Yeah.
and made it. And that's one of the founders that I feel like you would resonate with a lot. And who knows, maybe Peter Thiel will come on board at one point at PartRunner and take you guys to the stratosphere and scale super fast. But Tarun, thank you so much for this conversation. It was fun, and I hope that I will see that news on LinkedIn very soon. That big update that another investor came on board, lead investor, and you guys are dominating the Latin America marketplace, and hopefully even beyond that, maybe expansion to Europe. Have you ever thought about Europe?
Not really. To be honest, why not Europe? Because it's a completely different geographical space in terms of culture too, I guess, right? Because we started in US, we expanded to LATAM, right? If you tell me post LATAM, maybe come back to US, but if you tell me 10, 15 years, why not? I think these days startups are much more, the boundaries are, how to say, a kind of erasing, right? If you're able to build a company in one place, what it takes you to open that market in another country, which has completely different dynamics, is getting very thinner and thinner. It really comes down to your risk levels and your capital investment and your willingness to take that jump. But yeah, why not? One day.
Why not? One step at a time,
Never say no.
obviously. It's I know that coming from Europe, it's logistics space, transportation space is obviously huge because you have so many different countries, and
Yes.
there's daily transportation between all those countries. You have European Union that has made it easier to transfer. You don't have to wait at the border for a day or two or a weekend sometimes when they essentially don't allow any trucks to enter on Friday afternoon and allow you back in on Sunday night between
Wow.
from Sunday to Monday. So yeah, it's definitely interesting space. But again, you guys have a right direction, and You found a nice niche, and looks like it's going to help you expand vastly over the next decade. So I wish you that. And please stay on for another minute. We'll finish recording at this point. Thank you so much again, and I look forward to connecting further on LinkedIn.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks again, Matt, for having me, and it was a real pleasure talking to you. We'll be in touch.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.